Drake fixing his Anita Max Wynn Tour right around the same weekend as the Grammys and Super Bowl can't be a coincidence, right? People have been clowning him for running halfway across the world just to avoid being anywhere near Kendrick's historic moments. And while he's been trying real hard to act cool and unbothered by K-Dot's dominance at the Grammys, we all know Drake has been watching every single second of it. You can bet he was seething inside as the industry celebrated Kendrick, racking up award after award, all thanks to the brutal defeat he suffered at Kendrick's hands. For a moment, Drake almost had us fooled. It seemed like he was truly unbothered by the fact that Kendrick just torched him at the Grammys with the very diss track that destroyed his standing in the culture, but no, it turns out he's very much bothered, angry even. He just can't stand the massive attention and praise showered on Kendrick by the industry and wider hip-hop community in the past few days. The wild part? Nobody even had to force it out of him. His face said it all the second he stepped on stage for the first time in months. While Kendrick is out here basking in a well-deserved victory, Drake is on tour doing, well, the complete opposite. But before we dive into the mess Drake got himself into on his first night back and how it only fuels the delusional sore loser narrative, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. After responding to the loss of his beef with Kendrick in the most embarrassing ways possible, streaming stunts, petty lawsuits, and straight up desperation, you know, all those things, people thought maybe, just maybe, he was finally moving on and focusing on giving his fans a great show, but it only took a few minutes into the first concert to realize no, Drake is still not over this beef. His actions on stage in Australia weren't the moves of someone with a plan, they were pure emotion. And in a moment when the entire hip-hop world is celebrating his fall from grace, emotion is the last thing he should be leading with. If Drake had a strategy in mind for this tour, this definitely wasn't it. From start to finish, the show by Drake was packed with shade, sneak disses, and some weird energy. It's clear he's trying to recycle some of the corny, cringeworthy antics from his It's All a Blur tour. Remember when he threw shots at Childish Gambino on the Jumbotron? Well, if you thought that was embarrassing and ridiculous, you're not ready for the nonsense he's about to pull on this tour. And the funniest part, after dragging hip-hop's core values through the mud with that lawsuit stunt, Drake still expects people to take him seriously. At this point, it's comical. The lack of self-awareness is actually mind-blowing, unlike anything we've ever seen before. Drake really tried to frame this tour like nothing in the last 10 months ever happened. Like he's living in a different reality than the rest of us. How else do you explain him standing on that stage telling the crowd that everything is fine when it's clearly not? We all saw the seismic shift of power between him and Kendrick. The numbers aren't the same. The influence isn't the same, and yet here's Drake acting like his career is still untouchable. It was obvious Drake designed this performance to send a message to the industry, his critics, and anyone who thought he wouldn't survive this beef. The message? No matter what's gone down since all this started, he's still standing. The first clue was in his outfit. Drake hit the stage in a hoodie riddled with bullet-like holes with theatrical smoke pouring out as if he'd just walked off a battlefield. The symbolism was clear. He wanted the world to see him as some kind of unstoppable warrior, someone who could take a hit and take another hit and take another hit but still refuse to fall. At first glance, the whole thing might seem kinda cool, but once you see it in motion, you realize it just doesn't make sense. Yes, he did walk out of a lyrical battlefield with Kendrick, but the part where he is trying to claim he didn't fall is where he messed up because he fell. Hard. Like Kendrick said on Not Like Us, hip-hop fans aren't gullible anymore. Trying to spin a narrative that you're still untouchable after taking the biggest L in rap beef history, yeah, that's just not going to work anymore. Everyone in that arena knew what happened. Everyone saw Kendrick obliterate him, and yet here's Drake putting on a show like he's some undefeated gladiator. If the roles were reversed and Drake had actually won this battle, him stepping out in a tattered hoodie blowing out smoke would still be over the top, but at least his fans could defend it. Right now, it kinda just looks delusional. What's even wilder is how Drake still carries himself with so much pride, despite being the same guy who ran to judges and filed lawsuits because he got schooled by a better rapper. Acting tough on the outside while scrambling and running scared behind the scenes is just classic Drake at this point. And then there's the moment where he reminded everyone he's been making music since 2008, flexing that he's still active and on top 17 years later. Sure, Drake has been dropping hits back to back since '08, but pretending he's still running the game in 2025 is just another of his straight up delusions. But that wasn't even the most interesting part of the show. If you caught it, you probably noticed the jacket Drake was rocking had Tony Montana, Al Pacino's iconic Scarface character, printed on it. So let's get this straight. Drake really thinks his role in this beef is comparable to Scarface. He wants to be a gangster so badly that he thought stepping into the lyrical ring with an actual OG like Kendrick would give him the street cred he's been chasing. And, well, we all saw how that turned out. If anyone in this beef deserves a Scarface comparison, it's Kendrick. Whatever message Drake was trying to send with that jacket wasn't a smart one. He really thought too highly of his character in this beef. But maybe Kendrick was right about a few things on Not Like Us after all. We all know Drake has been desperate for that deep-rooted respect in hip-hop, but it keeps slipping through his fingers. And that's probably why he's always been a little jealous of Kendrick, because K-Dot doesn't have to try to earn that respect. He is the culture. That's the kind of validation Drake has always wanted, and he risked his entire legacy trying to chase it. But seriously, how does a guy who sings Girls Want Girls think he can wear a Tony Montana jacket and be taken seriously? No way that's ever gonna happen. It's obvious this entire show was carefully orchestrated to push a specific narrative that Drake is still that guy and remains as dominant as ever, but in reality, the execution just made him look like a sore loser who refuses to accept the L he took. What's crazy is that if the actual performance had matched the effort put into the PR package, people would have given him props. But despite running through 30 songs, some of the biggest hits of his career, everything about the show still felt basic. A lot of people thought losing to Kendrick would force Drake to tap into a new level of creativity, that we'd finally see him evolve the way Jay-Z did after his battle with Nas. But it's clear Drake has decided to turn a blind eye to that playbook. This was his moment to show the world a reborn, recharged version of himself, an artist hungry to win again. Instead, he's letting his obsession with revenge cloud his judgment, and that refusal to grow and evolve is exactly why he'll never be in serious conversations to headline events like the Super Bowl or pull off a real stadium tour. For someone of his caliber, his stage presence is shockingly mediocre. Even J. Cole, who has a way more reserved personality, can command an audience far better than Drake can. If Drake ever attempted a stadium tour without a stacked lineup to carry the energy, it'd be a complete disaster. That's not an exaggeration either. His live performances have never been his strong suit, but this Australia show? This was a new low, and let's be clear, this isn't some agenda against him, it's just facts. This is the same guy who's compared his star power to Michael Jackson and Prince, and even claimed countless times he's the best rapper ever. Yet all he does on stage is pace back and forth, letting the backing track do most of the work. You can't call yourself one of the greatest to ever do it and then treat live performances like an afterthought. It just doesn't work like that. Being the greatest encompasses everything. Meanwhile, other A-list rappers have been refining their craft, pushing the boundaries of what a hip-hop live performance can be and should be, but Drake, well, he's been too comfortable, too caught up in enjoying his reign rather than elevating it. Fans have been complaining for years about the gap between rap concerts and other genres, how hip-hop shows often feel lazy in comparison, and instead of raising the standard, Drake helped lower it. He might claim he respects the art form, but his approach to live shows tells a very different story. Failing to give fans a real unforgettable experience, especially the ones spending big money to see you live, is just disrespectful. Live performances have been taken to the next level. Artists are no longer just miming their songs being played in the background. Look at J. Cole's Forest Hills Drive anniversary show. That was 10 times more captivating than anything Drake put together on this tour, or any tour even. As a rapper, you've got to be able to bring that energy from the booth to the stage. Many believe being an MC and being a performer or a showstopper are two different things, but in reality, they're really not. You've got to be able to give your fans maximum experience anytime they come to your show. It's the least any rapper could ever do. Take Kendrick, for example. His live performances are crafted to perfection, down to the tiniest detail. From choreography to visuals to sheer presence, K-Dot never misses. But when it comes to Drake, he acts like the privilege of seeing him live should be enough. Most of the time, all he does in his shows is rap over his own pre-recorded vocals, throwing in some corny moments in between and calling it a day. That's not just disrespectful to fans, it's an embarrassment to hip-hop as a culture. It's a total disregard for the art form of being an MC. Plenty of top-tier rappers cringe at the thought of performing to a pre-recorded track, but here we are, watching the self-proclaimed biggest rapper in the game doing exactly that. Again. In an era where artists like Kendrick Lamar and Tyler the Creator have redefined what it means to experience an MC live, Drake is still coasting, refusing to evolve. What he doesn't seem to realize is that the days of people blindly thinking everything he does is cool are long gone. Kendrick has officially reset the playing field, and the competition is back on. Anyone who thinks Drake is being criticized too harshly, just buy a ticket to a Kendrick show or a Tyler show. The difference in stage presence, execution, and overall fan experience is night and day. Watching Drake perform some of the biggest hits of his career at this show would make anyone wonder, has he always been such a bad live performer, or has he just stopped caring about the craft? He was never an elite solo performer, but this was next level uninspired, especially considering what's at stake. If he really wants to reassert himself back at the top of the food chain, every detail, including live performances, matters now more than ever. At this point, his entire team should be focused on squeezing every possible opportunity for positive PR, but instead, they can't even get one show right. Drake desperately needs to take a page out of the Jay-Z playbook and focus on what actually matters: getting back to the top. Every great rapper who's taken an L in a feud has done the same thing. They use that loss as fuel to come back harder. He needs to channel his thirst for revenge into actually elevating his craft on every level. For so long, Drake convinced himself he had already reached the pinnacle, but now that Kendrick has raised the bar, he has no choice. If he wants to stay in the conversation, he has to reinvent himself in ways nobody would see coming. So far, this new tour has only reinforced one thing. Drake is still living in the illusion that his place in the culture hasn't changed, but everyone knows the truth. The keys to the kingdom have been snatched from him. If the goal of this tour is to generate some positive momentum and convince UMG to renegotiate, he needs to step it up, fast. His biggest competition is about to shut down the Super Bowl halftime show with a statement performance. If Drake really wants to prove he's still a top dog, now is the time to match that energy, because right now, every move he makes is only making his critics feel even more justified. Oh, and let's not forget, Drake has an album dropping this month. For his own sake, it better be packed with undeniable hits, or else this could be catastrophic. This joint project with Party Next Door could be a make or break moment for him, which is why it has to be near perfect. A year ago, the hype and anticipation of Drake's project would have been through the roof, but now everything's changed. Drake has lost that golden touch where everything he dropped felt like an instant classic. But more than that, his ongoing war with his label casts a huge shadow over his release. If this album doesn't offer something new, if it doesn't show us a side of Drake we haven't seen before, he might as well take a hiatus before he completely taints his legacy. And now, with his next tour stop happening at the same time as Kendrick's Super Bowl performance, Drake better step up his performance all the way, or he's going to get dragged and trolled across every corner of the internet. So what do you think about Drake's chameleon moves, acting like he's over the beef while constantly contradicting himself? Do you agree he needs to reinvent himself if he wants to truly compete with Kendrick again? Let's discuss in the comment section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on this wild drama, because boy, it's far from over. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.